Hey everybody. So the more our government presses us to be coarser and coarser and pay less attention to the things we should pay attention to, the more I feel inspired to pay attention to the things we should pay attention to. So let me acknowledge that here we're in land that was known in the Lenape language as Manhattan, and that's the ancestral and unceded homeland of the Lenape people, also known as the Delaware. And for thousands of years before European colonization, the Lenape lived, traveled, and gathered on this land, caring for it, maintaining rich cultural, spiritual, and ecological traditions. We recognize the enduring presence of the Lenape diaspora and honor the many indigenous peoples who continue to live and work in New York City and in this region today. This acknowledgement is a call to action towards justice and sovereignty for Native communities past and present. So, welcome to another of our Tuesday afternoon lectures. Today is not a lecture or a panel or a discussion between two. Today we've done what we've done in other years, and that is to ask our artists and residents to put together a panel that of their choosing, and that's what she has done. So let me introduce you to Claudia Sohrens, our artist in residence. I think you all know Claudia. And Claudia is working with first-year participants in our program, but also has gotten to know many of you as well. And so without any further ado, Claudia, if you want to introduce your colleagues.
Sure, thank you, David. This evening we are joined by these three remarkable artists, Julia Taszycka, Audra, Wolowiec, and Susan Jahoda. And together we are exploring the concept of contamination as a framework for interdisciplinary collaboration. For me, thinking about contamination, it's something that is inescapable in our existence. It's a reality, and every being, every landscape, every project is shaped by encounters and entanglements with others, and that's how I think about contamination. And I thought about this in context of the residency that I have here at SVA and the students that I'm working with. I'm putting together an exhibition, and I wanted to invite these three amazing artists to help me think about how we can reframe contamination and in the context of interdisciplinary collaboration. So Julia Taszycka is a conceptual artist working with objects, installations, and video. I'm sorry, I have to read this. I'm a little bit nervous, so forgive me.
No, you're doing great. I wouldn't do it better.
Julia is a 2025 fellow in the Whitney Museum Independent Study Program, ISP, and a Fulbright Scholar. She holds an MFA or MFA degrees from Hunter and Poznan Art University. Her work has been exhibited at institutions including the National Museum in Wrocław, Lokal 30 in Warsaw, and White Columns Online in New York, and Proyecto Reme in Barcelona. She's an artist in residence at LMCC, or was an artist in residence at LMCC in 2022, and is a finalist was a finalist for the Hopper Prize in 2023. Audra Wolowiec is an interdisciplinary artist based in New York, whose work focuses on sound and the material qualities of language. She is a 2023 Artist Fellow in the New York, or was, sorry about this. I'll get there. She was a 2023 Artist Fellow at the New York Public Library Picture Collection, and we just actually had a project with the first year students where we went to the picture collection and thought about contamination and archival taxonomies. And you are investigating how sound is held in images, and you're also the 2024 book artist in residence at the Center for Book Arts. and you teach at Parsons, and you direct the publishing platform Gravel Projects. And then Susan Jahoda, I've known Susan for a really long time. We both are colleagues at ICP, and I participated in some of your projects like Rethinking Marxism. But you are an artist, educator, writer, an organizer who includes video, photography, text performance, installation, and research-based collaborative projects. Your individual and collaborative work has been exhibited in national and international museums and galleries, including venues in London, Paris, Basel, New York, Seoul, Canada, Moscow. You are a core member of BFA, MFA, PhD, a collective of socially engaged artists and educators based in New York City, and the co-author of Making and Being, Embodiment, Collaboration, and Circulation in the Visual Arts, which actually I used as one of my reference books at a class that I taught at Parsons. So thank you all for joining me. And the structure of this panel is that we thought we introduce you to everyone's work and one particular project. So, and then we will open the conversation. We had a little Zoom call, and I specifically asked each artist to present one project that we can imagine in the context of my investigation or my call, how we can think about contamination in collaborative practice. So Julia, if you want to start with your project.
Sure. First of all, thank you for being here, and thanks for having me here, and for a lovely introduction. For those of you who don't know me, which is most of you, when creating works, I work with discarded, damaged materials that I find on the streets of New York and other cities. I'm interested in the idea of trouble legacy of materialistic capitalist culture. And my fascination with found objects started when I moved in here to New York for my MFA at Hunter College, and because I come from Poland, which is post-communist country, it struck me how the reality of late capitalism, which is very much visible in New York, looks like, and how it also affects the art world. I see two interesting aspects of contamination in my practice: the material and conceptual, as well as the collaborative element that is an outcome of that approach. So I'll start with the most obvious one, which is the material contamination. So as I work with damaged, discarded, found objects that already lost their function, they're often covered with a layer of unwanted matter, whether it's dirt, soil, or some kind of chemical reaction that is happening to these objects because of its degradation. So I work with I often work with broken furniture, with some old elements of building installations and remnants from car accidents. What I'm trying to do, or what I'm trying to not to do, is like I do not interfere in these objects. So the objects you can see on the screen, they are in the same condition and state that I found them. because I'm interested more in their content and gestures and the content coming from gestures and situations that happen to these objects than my own artistic interference. Which leads me to my second point, that is the conceptual aspect of contamination, or the reasons behind those choices. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to face the art market tendency for commodification of art objects, and therefore I want to I'm trying to criticize the art world's demands. There are many reasons behind it, but today I would like to focus on the aspect of artist gesture that I'm somehow critical about, and because from the historical point of view, the artist gesture was usually prescribed to this individual genius male artist, and I don't see the point of me to contribute to this narration anymore. And from the more contemporary point of view, the artist gesture is something that is often fetishized by art markets, because it's easier to sell the idea of that was made out of the stroke of genius by this brilliant individual than the collective effort. So as an example, you can see some images from my recent solo show called Dirt that happened in Poland, in Poznań. So the exhibition consisted on found elements coming from various renovations, whether more industrial or from like private or more like private renovations. I featured the ready-mades and scattered around the gallery, and the common element of these pieces was the title "Dirt," which I deliberately did not remove. And in these projects and in my works in general, what is important for me is to show what the society doesn't want to look at anymore. Going back to the collaborative aspect of my work, as because I'm trying to limit myself by choosing and simply placing the pieces in the gallery, and I'm more concentrated on the histories behind it than my own individual, like let's say, aesthetic needs. I see these pieces as collaborative forms. Because they are outcome of the gestures and the situations that caused the shape and condition. And I also see them as some sort of witnesses of the ongoing social economic changes. So therefore, I see myself more as a messenger than the maker. So when I think about contamination, I see it more as a medium, the condition and critique, than just the byproduct of the disintegration. So by placing those objects in the gallery, I'm trying to a little bit contaminate the art system and disturb the narrative that we are facing. I think I could
Yeah.
I could take a break.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it also. Thank you. I kind of wanted to, sorry, I introduced you so quickly, but it was also that I reached out in search of like panelists. I reached out to AIR and I said, well, who are the artists in residence at AIR Gallery? And Joan Snitzer had just had a studio visit with you, and told me that you work with found object, and my own practice is going through archives and working with found materials and found photographs, and I'm often interested in the hair, the fingerprint, the coffee stains, like the history of the conservation, of the preservation, and the obsessiveness of like not contaminating or the fear of contamination, and that often leads to a sort of contamination in like chemical processes or something. But I picked or I selected you, I approached you because I thought there is a connection between the materials that I'm interested in that I find in archives and the materials that you find on the streets and the traces of it. So thank you for sharing this.
Thank you. Sure, anytime.
And then Audra, it was interesting because I wanted to collaborate with Audra on a project that I co-curated with Sherry Diamond, or we wanted to co-curate an exhibition at Westbeth, and that's how I was introduced to the project AIR. And initially, for me, just seeing the work, and also in the context of contamination, I thought about air as something that is usually we think of as being very polluted, and then and very contaminated. But in the context of your work and also the collaborative aspect of it, I think it is something that is rather the opposite and more like a cleansing and healing exercise or practice. And so it would be great if you could talk a little bit about that project.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really wonderful. I have a project to present, but it's also kind of circuitous in the way that I did some like writing around the ideas that inform it, and maybe also thinking about the questions that are brought up in this panel as well. So I'm just going to hold on this slide as I kind of introduce and kind of go through a thought process. So when I think about contamination, I think of water, toxicity, and our bodies. I think of systems of harm, from the organized corporate industrial to the cellular and microbial, often silent and hidden, seeping, spilling, oozing, dumping, draining, debris. And when I think about contamination, I think about the violence enacted by ICE, of moving people from homes, from work, from families, and embraces of care. People viewed as a contaminant in the way that contaminants must be removed. The acronym sharing the same name of the planet's most rapidly depleting natural resource, mainly due to contaminants. The language of contamination is loaded. And one could say it is saturated. In the book Saturation and Elemental Politics, Melody Jew and Rafika Ruiz write, saturation draws its etymology from the Latin satur, meaning full or glutted, while the Oxford English Dictionary adds that saturation is the condition of being thoroughly soaked. Yet saturation quickly exceeds its aquatic valences, offering a sensitivity to co-presences, transformations, and processes. Saturation is useful for analyzing situations in which the elements involved may be difficult or impossible to separate. So what can contamination do that is not violent, but rather a tender infiltration? What in our systems and society needs to be contaminated? Mary Douglas writes in Purity and Danger, if we can abstract pathogens and hygiene from our notion of dirt, we are left with the old definition of dirt as matter out of place. It implies two conditions, a set of ordered relations and a contravention of that order. Dirt, then, is never a unique, isolated event. Dirt is the byproduct of a systemic ordering and classification of matter, insofar as ordering involves rejecting inappropriate elements. Weeds come to mind. Can contamination be a disruption in a system of harm that could lead to care? In teaching, I've been thinking a lot about curiosity. Can curiosity be cultivated? Can it be taught? The origins of the word contain elements of care. Its etymology from the 14th century, careful attention to detail. From the Latin, the desire of knowledge. From careful or diligent, akin to cura, for care. How can curiosity contaminate systems of harm? Perhaps that this question is at the crux of learning and why our schools have been under assault. We are here to consider contamination and collaboration. So as an artist working with sound and language, extending from speech, voice, and my own experience with disfluent speech, the physicality of speaking with a stutter, these questions of curiosity, care, listening, and exchange all come into play. In the sound installation on the screen here, titled Air, our collective breath takes shape through chance collaboration and interpretation. The score for this sound installation was created from extracting the commas from the United States Constitution, a legal document that begins with a statement of bodies as a collective, we the people. Yet this charged document is often used against the very people it claims to protect. In music notation, much like in written language, the comma is the mark for a performer to take a breath. I was interested in locating the most human, empathic aspect of this document, bodies as breath. As a form of interpretation and embodiment, breath practitioners from various fields, acting, singing, Lamaze, and yoga, were invited to respond to the cadence of commas that make up the score relating to their work and practice. The breath practitioners include Carly Eckert, Denise Hopkins, Elizabeth Casanova Calderon, Katie Mullins, and Mark Trecca. Breath is our vocal thread. Beyond culture, border, and language, it is our cry to live, how we comfort, and what can be taken from us. In this installation, the commas from the score punctuate the surrounding walls. Speakers are embedded in long 2x4 beams, building materials normally hidden from view, and a nod to the term framers who first drafted the Constitution in 1787. Each speaker contains one voice of various lengths of time to create an ever-changing chorus of breath. When listeners enter the space, one's own breath becomes enmeshed and in conversation. This was shown at Mecca, Maine College of Art in 2021 during the pandemic when the collective space of breath was not possible and when breath was and continues to be, in fact, a contaminant. The recordings and score were then given to 4 musicians to further interpret. This time musically produced on a 7-inch record that was editioned along with the sound score in book form, actually in several book forms, inviting others to listen and to potentially perform. This is one of the books here, where the commas are laser cut from the pages. And then this edition, Air, with the pages of commas. And this is what was given to the breath practitioners to respond to, and they responded in their own breathing techniques. And then the recordings of breath and the score were also given to 4 musicians, and one of them was Alex Waterman, whose piece I'd like to play just an excerpt of. It's titled Breath Cello, where he interpreted the notes by bowing his cello along the edges and the corners of the body, the neck, and metal stand of his cello rather than the strings, and placed a contact microphone inside the instrument to give it a resonant depth. It's hard to capture in the recording. I'm just going to switch over here. And you can also listen on Gravel Projects, which is linked through my website. Oops. So you're hearing that kind of grating breath. So in this project, collaborators were invited to interpret, embody, and activate notations closer in spirit to suggestions, prompts, or chance operations. The original score is not in a fixed state, but one always in flux. And variations emerge in each performance, and others are needed to activate the work. I'm not sure that I would equate this activation as contamination. Perhaps to better understand contamination, we must disconnect its meaning from binary value systems, placing it in a more ambiguous interstitial zone. Sound itself is porous, hard to contain. It spills from one container to the next. It vibrates and can be felt as much as it's heard. It moves through us and it moves us. It is a medium. It has the power to cause harm and the power to connect. Is noise contaminated sound? In the Sound Studies essay by Hugh Pickering and Tom Rice, they write, many have settled on a definition of noise as sound out of place, a reformulation of Mary Douglas's definition of dirt as matter out of place. Beyond this, however, no effort has been directed towards exploring the link between dirt and noise or seeing how far the analogy between the two extends. Douglas's classic anthropological work can be used as the basis for an integrated theory of noise, deepening our understanding of what it means when we describe sound as noise and drawing attention to the ambiguous, transgressive, and dangerous qualities and potentials of noise. And that was a quote from their essay. There are many sounds, especially ones we make with our mouths, that are outside the range of accepted sound, often viewed as noise. The ableist manifestations of which sounds are odd and unwanted are numerous, often causing the listener to become uncomfortable, impatient, to laugh, or even to correct the sound by speaking over or for the person making these unsound utterances. And this is where my interest lies. This is a quote. "It is in large part according to the sounds people make that we judge them sane or insane, male or female, good, evil, trustworthy, depressive, marriageable, moribund, a little better than animals," writes Anne Carson in the opening paragraph of The Gender of Sound. I have been referring to my own disfluent speech as unsound, similar to a structure that is not stable, creating a relationship between speech and place, and perhaps more specifically, speech as material and matter. And it is in this matter of speech that I continue to locate the particles of breath, the grain of the voice from Roland Barthes, that share a granular relationship, with dirt, debris, and gravel, linguistic contaminants that form the basis of my work.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm quite speechless. There was so much, and I want to maybe hang on to. It's hard to hang on because you touched on so many things. It was really wonderful to listen to you, how you unpack the idea of contamination and bringing it to sound and noise and reconnect it to dirt and to Julia's work. So it was wonderful. So maybe to use or transition with this performative aspect of it and the idea of collaboration. I want to introduce Susan's work, which is we had something else in mind, and because we got together last year at a memorial exhibition at 601 for Robert Blake's memorial. You actually performed or you read some of this text. This body is not a danger to itself or other bodies, and so you suggested generously that you would like to read it to us tonight as well. So I don't know if you want to maybe talk a little bit about how that project came about, or should we just jump into it?
I think I'll do the performance first, and let you have the experience of the performance, and then maybe we can unpack it afterwards, and I can provide a little context for it. I will say that it's an iterative work, and it was first performed in 1994, and has had many lives since then in many different performances, always collaborative until the person that I actually produced the text and the video, or at that time 16mm film, once my collaborator passed, I took the 16mm film and re-edited it. I had the original sound, and so in a sense have made a new work out of it. And so what you'll actually see are the visuals from the performance without text, and my reading will be about 7 minutes, and then the last part of the performance will be, you'll hear both my voice and Robert Blake's voice. So, yeah. This body is not a danger to itself or other bodies. This is the part of my body that has no name. This is where my body begins. This is the part of my body that's innocent. This is the part of my body that hurts. This is the part of my body that smells. This is the most beautiful part of my body. This is the part of my body I want to hide. This is the part of my body that is in the wrong place. This is the part of my body I've fixed. This is the part of my body I've changed. This is the most sensitive part of my body. These are the parts of my body I would like to be visible. This is the part of my body that's wounded. This is my foreign body. This is my positive body. This is the part of my body I can't see. This is the oldest part of my body. This is the most arid part of my body. This is the most recent part of my body. This is the saddest part of my body. This is the part of my body that's tired. This is the part of my body I like to touch. This is the part of my body that gets away from itself. Is there something wrong with my body? This body is not a danger to itself or other bodies. Where is the evidence of deviance in my body? This is the part of my body that will always remain the same. This is the part of my body that passes. This is my temporary body. This is my body bearing witness to itself. This is the part of my body that won't stay in place. This is my second body, desiring the interior of the first. This is my whole body. This is the history of my body. This is my ancestral body. This is the body I will surrender. This is the part of my body that's unmarked. This part of my body comes from my mother. This part of my body comes from my father. This is the body that belongs to me. This is the part of my body that's slippery. This is the part of my body that tastes sweet. This is the part of my body that's sharp. This is the part of my body I punish. This is the innermost part of my body. This is the part of my body that's soft. This is the part of my body that's smooth. This is the part of my body that is invisible. This is the part of my body that takes up a lot of space. This is the part of my body that's silent. This is the part of my body that's fearful. This is the part of my body that's ritualized. This is the part of my body that aches. This is the part of my body that's ragged. This is the part of my body that bleeds. This is the part of my body that's hungry. This is the part of my body that craves. This is the part of my body that comes from plants. This is the part of my body that comes from animals. This is my body that comes from stars. And Claudia, you can turn on the volume.
Where is the evidence of deviance? body I touch to remember you. This is my silent body.
That has no
This is the memory in my body of your body.
bearing
This
witness
is the part of my
This
body
is the body
that
I will
fix.
surrender.
This
This
is the part
is
of
my
my
whole
body that
body.
comes from my
This
Father.
is the part of my
This
body
is the
that
part
is
of my
innocent.
body that's most fearful.
This is the part of my body that
This
has
is
no
the part
language.
of my body
This
that
is the
tastes
part
sweet.
of my body that
This
speaks.
is the part of
This
my
is the
body
part of
that
my
takes
body
up
that
a lot of
shouts.
space.
This is
This
the part of my
is the
body
part
that
of
tastes
my body
sweet.
that's
This is the
invisible.
part of my body
This
that is
is the
unmarked.
part of my body that's ritualized.
This is the part of my
This
body
is
that
the
I
most
don't
beautiful part
recognize.
of my
This
body.
is the part of my body
This
that's
is my
invisible.
second body desiring
This
within
is
the
the part
interior
my
of the
body
first.
that bleeds.
This is the
This is
body
the part
I
of my
will
body
surrender.
that comes from my
This
Father.
is the inner part
This is
of
the
my
inner part
body.
of my body.
This is where my body comes together.
Susan, do you want to just? As I was thinking about it, I was thinking about, or as we were talking earlier, we talked about that this piece has only been performed very few times since you've created it, and that actually the 16 millimeter film you haven't shown at all, right?
Well, it's been digitized.
It's been digitized.
So, and then re-edited into this piece, along with the original audio tapes that we made that constitutes the sound.
So the collaboration was the performance, and then the 16 millimeter film is the documentation of the performance, or is that separate?
It's a little complicated, as you know, speaking of iterative processes, and if you want to use the term contamination, but as things change over time. So the original text was written for a performance that we were invited to do for a women's caucus project for the College Art Association in a gallery downtown in the 90s. And we made the 16 millimeter film to run in the background. And part of the text, just about a quarter of the text, was a part of that performance. And in that performance, we had actually our blood drawn, and then the blood was mixed, and speaking of contamination, and then we made a series of drawings. A number of years later, we were invited to do a performance that for a project called Banned on Campus, which was a project about censorship, and we completed the text. And that was an entirely live performance that didn't involve any of the 16 millimeter film. And then we were invited to publish the text, so we published it without any performative elements. And then after Robert passed, we decided that, because we hadn't actually done collaborative work for many, many years, so we, for his memorial, I was asked to do this performance, and then I decided I'd take all the material and put it together as a way of honoring him as well, and our collaborative work together.
So I wanted to connect maybe, or get back to Audra's work and your work. And it seems that there's the presence of the multiple voices. Like Audra, you're collaborating like with multiple people who are following a score, interpreting a score, and they are you kind of ask them to translate, to I don't know, infiltrate, interpret. how and then Susan, you're sort of, you hear the two voices juxtaposed and on top of each other. So we have, and then similar to the breathing effect, when I close my eyes, I feel like my body is also talking to your piece. So I hear my own voice talking in that piece as well. So maybe Susan, can you talk about like first like how that collaboration or that giving up control or not giving up control, I mean how that collaborative work together, you have the two voices, how that came together, or how
Well, the two voices together they came together post production. So we had recorded my part of the text, and then Robert had his part of the text, and then I put the two pieces together. But when we performed it, we did have our own lines, but we weren't speaking over each other.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I'm answering your
I'm just
question.
I just want to also in terms of like the collaborative process and giving up control, or there are certain power dynamics or voices that. So how did you collaborate in this piece and in putting it together? And also presenting it to an audience and incorporating in a more, I think, activist or also political context, this piece, which also drawing blood, making these blood drawings, performing naked or like in these transparent suits, maybe is not. I was saying earlier, it's not that easy to do a performance like this, or to even work with blood anymore. And even I think in the early 90s, like if we think about the AIDS crisis, about everything, everybody, was afraid and scared and probably not ready to work with blood. So how did that?
Well, maybe I should just back up a little bit and say something about how, I would connect this work to this notion of contamination, because the piece is really about the ways in which it's about violence towards and against the body. It's about the ways in which we self-surveil and the ways in which, we internalize oppression, the way in which the state imposes through ideological state apparatuses forms of oppression. And our responses, the text is really a kind of dialogue with self. It's a conversation with self about those forms of violation and surveillance, and how to recover from those, how to find a sense of self. And it goes back and forth between moments of empowerment and moments of sadness, moments of grief, and the in a way, how we are unstable subjects. So in terms of contamination, the connection would be to the ways in which we internalize those oppressions, or the way in which those oppressions are acted upon us. We are contaminated by them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I don't know, I want to open the conversation to the whole panel. So I don't know if I thought like just both of you have to do both of your projects, like the breathing, the blood, the body. They are so connected. So I don't know, Audra, if you want to maybe talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really struck by both of your presentations, and also the presence of bodies in your work, or the absence of bodies. There's such a presence in your performance of all of these details and aspects that are there's a tenderness to it, and I love the collaborative reading. I wouldn't have known that was pieced together afterwards. Your cadences like meet each other so well, but it seemed like you're bringing everything into presence, and all of us into that presence as well. And there's something about your work that is the absence of bodies, right? It's like, as you were talking, I was curious, like if you ever talk to anyone who has discarded it, or if there's ever conversations around the people that like discard things, because that is the collaboration, and there's always an absence of the body, but it's present in this way that they're almost hiding from the dissolution of like what it is, or the damage, right? It's like their bodies are contained in the damage of the object.
Oh yeah, I talk to everyone, maybe too much even. So it depends. Okay, so now I'm being the serious version of me. So it depends, because some of the objects I just find, and they are like dumped, they are alone, so there is not many people to talk to. So the context is something that I and the viewers later would have to figure out by ourselves. So there's good the context of place, of the materials, of time, etc. Sorry, do you mind if I will?
No,
because otherwise I will need a cup and.
I think you just got it.
Like, because there is this like white square on my eyes, and
sorry. You want to go back there?
I don't know. I don't know my.
Oh, sorry. Where can we go?
Oh yeah. Okay, that's okay. Can we do it full screen? I don't know. That's
sure. Hang on one second. How do I go full screen on this? Order this.
Am I being annoying? I'm sorry. It's okay. I can close my eyes. Don't worry, please. No. Let's. Yeah. Oh, actually, when I'm here, it's fine. Regarding the conversation, I sometimes have a conversation with people that discard these items, but it's mostly about asking them if it's okay if I will just take it, and they're usually relieved because they have so much things to dump that they're like shocked that I want to. But yeah, anyway, yeah, and then I was just trying to make a joke, but that was horrible. So let's move on.
When we talked about like collaborative aspect, or you said something to me like the first time we spoke about your work, you said it's mine but not mine, and you were like what a
statement! Oh my god!
So I thought it was very interesting because working with like photographs of other people and just claiming something to be yours, but at the same time you know it's not yours, but you're turning it into something else and extracting it from that original context and putting it into an art space. And so I'm curious in terms of like, you know, thinking about the audience, but also your relationship to these objects. You know, because you also described your objects as being something abstract. So I'm curious just.
Well, I see them as abstract because even though they used to have a certain function, they are deprived of it. So in a way, they are abstract, even though they carry some context from the previous thing and previous function. And so that was the last thing you said, and before there was
so when you said mine, but my objects
Right.
are mine, but not mine.
Yeah.
That somehow that stuck with me because I thought it was very powerful, and so maybe you can talk a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that's this ugly aspect of appropriation that I'm doing. Like I said, I'm seeing myself more as a messenger here than the actual maker. So I choose them, yes, and there is some, let's hope, thinking process behind that. There is some of my engagement, obviously. But on the other hand, the way they are shaped, the way what they contain, and they context, they are not. So how I see it is just that this work is not about me. It's not supposed to be. I'm not interested in my own narrative as much, and nor should you. They carry the histories and the context, the stories of the previous owners of the time in the history that we are at now. So, and they are also, like, on the other hand, they also belong to the viewer. Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think so, but it's also maybe like the essence of collaboration and ownership and authorship is that you can't control every detail. That's not part of it. When you collaborate, you invite another person, which means other like ways of approaching something. And I think in your work that comes across as well, and also in the photographs, it's like you're inviting in something by engaging with those dynamics.
And just to, in thinking about your work and thinking about the space between an utterance that's made by one person and the capacity to comprehend that utterance in that space, I mean, that is the collaborative space where there's a possibility something becomes generative in that space, that something's been misunderstood, or you might use the phrase contaminated because it is misunderstood, but then it becomes generative, and therein lies the rub of collaboration, and it's both its positive and its complex and difficult aspects. But I think, I mean, that's also the nature of relationships and the problems of communication, right? We say something and it's misunderstood by the person that it was said to, and then we hope that we can turn that around and create something generative from the productive misunderstanding.
Yeah, in my practice, I always look for things that are also misfiled, or English not being my first language. There's always something that's lost in translation also, where I just understand something completely different or express myself using the wrong word, and it becomes either funny or often also inappropriate, or it doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't always, it's not always, well, it's generative. It doesn't always have to be this misunderstanding it opens up like new possibilities and new narratives and new ways of approaching things as well. So I don't think it's always, like that's why I think contamination is not always a negative thing. It can be very generative and productive and positive. If we see it as a way or to open up more possibilities, and not just like how we always understand it the same way, but it may open actually something new perspectives, and so yeah. And I always think about, like we talked about, like touch and bodies, and also how two things come together and can contaminate in that way, not just as an overlay, but also as a reaction to one another. So it's not just a juxtaposition, but it goes beyond that. And so I want to explore that in my research and in my curatorial practice. I'm thinking about putting together exhibitions in which you don't know what the works are, but by putting them together, you may just create narratives that neither one person nor the other expected. And so I'm also very interested in the element of chance and the unpredictability in collaborative work. And really pulling from that aspect. And I think all three of you are working with, to a certain extent, with chance or unpredictability in that collaborative way. Should we? Are we ready to open this for to you guys? Do you have any questions to any one of us? Any thoughts? Any yes?
First of all, thank you all. This is really a privilege and really interesting to hear what you all do. One quick thing, and then a question about what you just said. First thing, I was wondering if we could just get the spellings of your last names.
Oh, hang on one second.
We all have complicated
Sorry.
We can see them. Yeah.
Oh.
I also have like a thing. We're here.
Oh, it is, okay. If it's, I didn't get it to you. Sorry, I can find the information, so I will look at it.
I'm sorry.
Nice.
So we resolved this part.
Yes.
I have a question for Julia. So I find your practice to be really interesting.
Thank you.
Love finding old, rusty, broken building parts, and I often think about. I kind of like sometimes just stand there and look at the thing, and I think about the history behind it. So I really appreciate that. I am curious because I know you said that you find objects that have been abandoned, but also you even ask if you can take the items from whoever's discarding it. Do you engage in conversation about what they used it for? Like, do you?
So if I don't know, then yes. Usually I see I got some enough practice to distinguish certain building materials, so which I'm very proud of. And so when I see that someone is dumping certain materials, I usually know where it's coming from, or whether it was the how do you call it? Now I'm missing my vocabulary. But when I'm engaging in a conversation, I am also intrigued in okay, what's like, do you know what part of installation that was, etc., or what kind of material that is? But very often people who talk to me, they really want to make it brief. So I'm trying not to use their kindness, but and there are also things that I can read. Like, for example, there's some demolition of the building. I can see what is the reason of the demolition, or what is coming afterwards, etc. Yeah.
Can I ask a question to follow up? You also mentioned to me that some objects are too big, too large, like you leave them behind. And I was wondering how if you also claim them as like being part, and do you document?
I photograph some of them, yes. Some of them are still there waiting for me to pick them up. One day, maybe. If I cannot pick it up and carry because I have some limited capabilities physically, obviously. So, then I try to photograph them if I decide it makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
I had a question about the point you're making about the emphasis on chance and the possibility of meaning cohering or coagulating, let's say, coming together. And I wonder about this because it puts a lot of faith in the possibility of reception on other people or the moment of reception creating the meaning. And I wonder about this also because I feel like in the absence of criticism or artists can't always count on the audience. So oftentimes I feel that we're receiving our own work, and this is where research practices also become so elaborate because they're almost like anticipating and receiving their own, creating their own place in history, their own narrative somehow. And I wonder about this faith that you have in the possibility that others will create meaning or that meaning will be created, this aspect of chance that is so important, if you could speak more to that. And I think it's in each of the practices, so anybody.
Yeah, in my practice it is really that I go. It's more intuitively that I follow something, and it always also my research and my practice always leads me down like a rabbit hole, and I ask myself the same question: is like, how do I make sense of it? But it is often that like by accident. Like for example, when I work in archive with archive material, and something is put in sleeves, and then the overhead light is blocking out words in the text that I'm reading, then that all of a sudden you have to receive it. Like you said, you have to be open to see what's in front of you as the chance presents itself. Otherwise, it's just it's gone. It's something you didn't recognize or didn't see. And I'm not sure if I'm thinking so much about an audience as much as I am thinking about my own sort of like the stories that I want to tell and that present itself. And sometimes it's sort of like an accident is the beginning of a work, right? So I didn't notice these lights on sleeves, and then I suddenly make like a work that has to do with like light leaks that come through like a window curtain on images, and that erase something or add something to it, and then I talk about perception and the medium of photography. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I do agree with you that if you don't see the moment in which something presents itself, then it's just like it didn't happen, or it didn't manifest into anything.
And maybe that's because it's an active system. It's like, it's not a passive system where you kind of throw things out and let them fall. You're constantly in conversation and in response to like what's happening or what's unfolding or what's being presented or what another person said. And so I think that activity around chance is keeps like one very engaged. And yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes it completely makes sense. It's more of a dynamic process that is happening, and especially if your practice is research based, it's or also sound. I always think about sound. I don't know, Nietzsche said the ear is the organ of the fear, I think, because you hear something before you see something. It's always, there's something weird and ominous to it. So there's like a lot of, you just have to listen and also pick up what you're listening to or what you're hearing. And there's a lot of chance constantly because we're constantly surrounded by sound. There's sound everywhere.
I think chance takes place within the context of intention. So we come to a body of work and we allow a certain amount of chance to happen, but it's always happening within a context. right? If it doesn't happen within a context, and then maybe the work isn't so powerful, or it isn't, but when it has intention and when it's situated. So in a sense, a chance operation is always taking place, I think, within a somewhat controlled environment or situation or a system.
Yeah.
There's another question back there.
I think it's interesting what he brings up, and it's also interesting that he framed it in terms of faith, like having faith in the receptive power of either the audience or the artist to recognize when chance changes the meaning, because you could just as easily frame it as skepticism. You could say, I have a lack of faith in the artist's ability to, when they're controlling the environment completely, to come up with an interesting enough meaning or a compelling enough meaning, and that it's kind of a skepticism of authorship that opens up the field to chance. I think you could just as easily see it that way.
Well, yeah, I think in collaborative practices, you always give up, and that is one of the problems, I think, that who is the owner or the author of the work that you are doing. So that is in all of us. It's really, I mean, even Julia, like your work is you're the author in a way because you saw it, you picked it up, you extracted it, and you're presenting it to us. But the object was manufactured and was used and went through its whole history. So that's also the mine, not mine aspect of it. But authorship is huge, and I also, speaking to like the singular author and giving up that idea, that notion, I think in collaboration that you, and there are many collaborations where people said, oh, let's do something together, and then it succeeded, and then one person claims the work and the other person never gets credit for it, and although the collaboration, the collaborative aspect, the others that were participating or invited or received a call, there's much the author, obviously. And so that's what I find so interesting in your work, because you're also asking for an interpretation of an idea. And so I think that is also giving up authorship and losing control and just saying, yeah, chance, let's work with that and let's give it up. I think it's interesting.
I think for collaborative practices to be successful, that groups have to create or work with certain protocols in order for collaboration to actually be successful. You have to develop practices.
Yes, step one is even, the set of rules. And it's weird, we're talking about chance, and yet there has to be a set of rules from the very beginning. And it's an interesting contradiction or dynamic that you have to follow some rules to protect each other from each other, or from, or just to agree on like the format, the dimension, the medium, or whatever it is, or what is the outcome? What are we doing here? So it's interesting because in a way you're not just starting to do something, but it comes back to intention.
All right, I'm going to try to articulate this, but anyway, at the birth of the counterculture, early 60s, the idea of authorship was very popular, and it was important to re-examine what the author was, or lack of authorship was. And there was a kind of social agreement among most artists and liberal people that we wanted to rethink authorship and the kind of control that certain kinds of authors had. And all of your work seemed to place a claim on that notion, an agreement, that we are collaborators in an open reading of the text, as we would call it. But now I'm really fearful because we all got used to it. And the moment of the outcome of the last election, there was a really famous slogan that became incredibly popular, which was, and several of you mentioned it sometime, your body, my choice. And this has gotten, I mean, there were even t-shirts. It's become really popular. So both as a misogynist claim and an anti-abortion literal claim, it also is coming into motion that it's another kind of claim that we no longer have a choice, we no longer can rethink authorship, we no longer can claim any kind of, analysis of authorship, we have to obey. So in that context, I hope I make that clear, all of you are working with those ideas, including the text that I recited that every day at elementary school, We the People of the
okay.
In unison with the class out loud with the flag. I mean, that was part of it. How are we going to rethink it now where that whole communal ideology is at risk? And how do we proceed by keeping strong communities or collaborations or ties? That's my question and my history.
Now, who wants to answer that?
I want to just talk to, so I never had to read that until or think about that text until I became a citizen. And then 2 weeks later, there was Roe v. Wade. So that was really but I thought about the commas as, okay, I can connect to I'm part of this, but I'm the commas. I'm part of that breathing exercise in between. So it's still for me. I don't want to cite those words. They're meaningless to me or even offensive or whatever. And they're highly politicized. But the commas have that all encompassing, including me, who is very critical of this text. And my daughter went to her schools and was like, she cannot say these words. I mean, I'm really anti, but you showed a way of bringing that text actually to somebody like me and accepting it. So I think this is very, very powerful to me. So I think there is, in this way, there is this subversiveness or this this power of extracting something and making it meaningful to include the people who are maybe not included, and especially right now. So
yeah, and I think that's the aspects of the document too that maybe speak about freedom that isn't actually true and speak about harm. And how that's perpetuated in the way that religion is used against people. And I was seeing a lot of the similar ties. And yeah, I think, I didn't have it as a part of school either because I moved as a kid and I missed those chapters. And so when I was hearing it a lot in the news and used by politicians often, against the people, against what I would imagine as a collective, I read it because and also it seemed totally entitled that I am able to live here and move around and not even having to have read it, and what the immigration process is and how it's used. And so erasing it was, I don't really think about it as erasing it. I think because you can still have it. I mean, it exists. It's not but I think it's just maybe pulling elements out for us to think about what are the those human aspects or what are the problems up with it, and the simplicity around that, kind of seeing each other as bodies and understanding that in a very empathic way, which is lost in it, I think. Yeah. But yeah, it's tricky and it's really complicated and it's really messy.
And my entire adult life was under the assumption that I some insight and control over my own authorship or readings.
Yeah.
It's apparent now that we're changing how we do it. Do you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think as artists, we have that power to really create something that, I don't know, that is transformative, that is inclusive, and so that's a power, it's a responsibility, that's a collaborative effort.
And propose certain ideas and odd new ways of thinking that are not necessarily centering the individual success as the goal for everyone. Yeah.
Does anyone have another last question for us, or should we close on this note of collaborating and stay strong and be powerful and work together?
I can say a statement on that note. I was just really moved by your description of the commas and pauses as the most empathetic part of the U.S. Constitution. I just used that as a write that down. But I think with what Joan was just talking about and the situation that we're facing right now, what I'm really eager to see is how those moments that you said of like contamination with care can be brought back into those words that are being weaponized, right? Not just the spaces in between as being the spaces that we can claim, but the righteousness with which those words were said in the first place, being able to claim those as our own and contaminate them with the values that we want to live by. Mm-hmm. I think that's not something that, I don't know if any of you have any answer to right now. I certainly don't, but it's something that as a student and artist I want to work towards. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was just really moved by
Thank you.
It was wonderful to listen to.
Thank you. Thank you all. This was wonderful.